What I'm showing you here is the process of preparing the ground. I'm stretching up large sheets of paper. I prefer working on paper to canvas as it holds the detail better of what I do. I'm working with traditional kind of graphic materials, sepia ink and a brush. That's all I'm using, but I like the idea of creating something monumental from minimum means. Once I've stretched the paper, I'll paint it with a kind of sizing material, often with a colour, so it has a kind of stain to it. So I've made some sketches in this sketchbook over the past few weeks of how the finished piece might appear or be constructed. Written notes, visual notes. When I look at the sketches I've done, even though they might have taken 3 or 4 seconds, I can from them recall all the kind of peripheral aspects of what occurred. Here there's not much more than a hedge on one side, a Welsh dragon on the flag, and this was a man dressed in a fox suit. This is in a place called Pennygroes in North Wales. The local student Labour Party who wanted to campaign against Plaid Cymru. Leanne Wood, the leader of Plaid Cymru, has allowed her members to vote independently on hunting. It was kind of vaguely amusing seeing someone in a fox suit screaming in Welsh at a bunch of Plaid Cymru supporters in the pouring rain. I spent a day with the monster raving loony party. Well, I called them up, I said, can I come and draw your campaign? And Howling Lord Hope, who's a candidate for Uxbridge, running against Boris Johnson, said, oh, so I'll be in my campaign headquarters, which turned out to be a Wetherspoons pub on the high street. It was pouring with rain that day as well. And I said, I'd like to, aren't we going to go out and do some campaigning? And he kind of looked out of the window and said, well, we might be the monster raving loonies, but we're not stupid. Let's see. I'm drawing a map of Britain just so I can locate where I've been and which events are where, and hopefully make some kind of sense of the election as a whole according to specific geography of the UK. I'm just going to roughly locate these sketches around about where the events happen. So I've got Swindon, which is where the Conservative Party launched their Democratic Unionist Party launched their manifesto at the Wright bus factory in Antrim. It's quite surreal seeing a bus with destination Victoria marked on it in the middle of a field in Northern Ireland. United Kingdom Independence Party had their St George's Day celebration at a local club. The Green Party, some veteran candidate for Brighton Pavilion, Caroline Lucas, with Brian May, the Inverurie, Alex Salmond's campaign in Aberdeenshire. Nicola Sturgeon made a visit. The extraordinary location of the Scottish National Party's manifesto launch in a former limestone quarry. A visit I made to my local mosque in Whitechapel to speak to them about their political engagements. I've got my master plan somewhere, but I don't know what I've done with it. I want to include a lot of personal material, things that I witnessed, translated into something visual that could embody the whole of the general election. That's quite a difficult task. I mean, so much happened. But I think I've come up with a kind of method of encompassing all of these moments and then kind of making sense as a whole. That's the task ahead of me. This is the finished work of art. It's titled The Government Stable and shows a fictitious space as a kind of archive of everything that happened during the general election campaign period. I wanted to show the election as a kind of familiar museum-like space. I've kind of sewn together this kind of patchwork of various architectures from across the United Kingdom. The main armature for it, you could say, is Leeds Town Hall, where the final kind of debate took place. As your eye kind of moves out, suddenly you're not in Leeds Town Hall anymore. You're in the Britvic bottling plant. where George Osborne delivered his Northern Powerhouse speech. Then further out takes you to the Lynch plant where Boris Johnson launched the London Conservative pledge card. Over the other side, you're all the way over in County Antrim at the Wright bus plant where the DUP had their manifesto launch. So it covers the entire United Kingdom. I wanted the the different events that I'm representing in the election to have been things that the public would have viewed. So, for example, people would be familiar with the idea of the kind of press scrum, which I witnessed every time I went to a UKIP event at which Nigel Farage was present. But it could be anyone in the middle of there. But I've made it into a kind of faux alabaster sculptural object that sits on top of this plinth here, much the same as other objects are being venerated inside glass cases. In this vitrine we have a fish from Newquay Market that the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg, was spotted holding. Electing by the British public of a new government is obviously it's a serious matter. So I've tried to represent that in the kind of weight of the structure. But within that, there are just the most bizarre things occurring. How does holding a fish in a market in Cornwall contribute to your election campaign? Because this is very much a repository of the remnants of electioneering, it's significant that there are no recognisable political figures in the drawing. And one of my concerns during the campaign as the election artist was to represent the British public's, the electorate's engagement with the whole process. This is the result of my election campaign, and I think rather than it being about the triumph of a particular message, it's about coalescence of all the details and all the attendant aspects and anecdotes of an election campaign in 2015.